restrooms, all of that. So, you know, when we looked at where we're at with this and where we've taken it to, we decided, you know, we're at that point where if we need additional square footage, we need an architect involved to help us decide what do we do with our current space versus if we need additional, what do we do with that? So that's kind of where we're at today, moving forward here. So there's a lot of unanswered thing. I don't know if we can answer everything tonight, but I think we're headed in the right direction. So to add, otherwise we're open to questions on anything. And I don't know, has everybody seen that article that came out? Was in the
newsletter, and it's part of that packet too. It's that second page.
So, like I said, this is kind of the gist of, you know, the high hitters that we've came across to kind of spell things out. So if you have questions, have at it.
Well, I'm kind of confused. I'm Janet.
Do you have a microphone for?
I'm looking at microphone.
One second, we'll get you a mic.
Hi.
Try it again.
Hello?
Okay, I don't have it close enough. Okay, so we're looking at just buying this property that we must not own just next to this property.
Yep. And
So
there's two different things we're voting on tonight. The first one is just moving forward with a building project.
Uh-huh.
The property, we'll talk about that one after the
Oh,
building one.
okay. Okay, so, are we looking at just changing this building into something, adding on, or a new building, or at this point, that's not part of it either?
All options are on the table.
So-
One thing that we talked about, and as elders talked about too, is none of us have ever, well, except for Sandy and maybe the Gustafsons, there's very few of us, and the Larsons, yes, there's very few of us that have ever gone through a building project before. And so we wanted to, that's why we want to hire professionals that have done it hundreds of times in the last year, because they know what to ask that we don't even know what to ask. And so it's not about, because we have a lot of great ideas. I mean, between us on the team here, Mark, Elder Board, we're like, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And we got to the point where like, okay, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So we need to know, we need to get somebody here that does know. And that's why we wanted to move forward with it. But the land, that 1.14 acres, was started through this whole conversation, because if we're going to grow and expand the actual building size, we want to make sure we have like a green space footprint and all that. And if you look at like the map, the property line from like Orton comes all the way down, and then we essentially don't own that hill. And so it's not much, but it just adds that green space, and for as cheap as it is, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's the why. That's what started the let's look at buying that piece of land.
Okay.
But that'll be separate votes. Does that help?
Yeah, so it's not really giving us anything to build on. It's giving us,
What it does,
Green.
it might give us the ability to whatever we have to expand. You know, some of the constraints we're up against in this project, or our project, if we go with one, is sewer and water cost. You know, do we bring city water in? We have existing septic systems. That may have some bearing on this project where we could use it for something per se that would add to it. So even though it's a separate vote, it will tie into this project or benefit this project if we go forward with one, either way. So.
okay.
Good question.
Anybody else?
When we built this facility, we went through that process of hiring somebody to do this because we were inexperienced. We couldn't do it. And it was Christian Investors. I think it was, wasn't it, Sandy?
Okay, Ron Anderson, he was a design builder, and he designed and his company built this building. But as Cindy alluded to, we did go through Christian Investors for the financing of it. So there's a handful of us know what they do, whether we go with Christian Investors or some other organization. They are well worth the money to be able to help us with the financing of it. So,
And the other thing that I wanted to bring up too is, one thing that we discussed as a team is we want to make sure that we are doing this not just for us. This isn't our church. This is the community. Like a part of our goals for the last few years is outreach and discipleship. And we don't want to add numbers to just add numbers. We want to save lives and bring people closer to Jesus. And so what really excites me is there's a few companies I've been talking to, design firms that work just with churches, and they pretty much told me on the phone as I was just first conversation with them, they said, whatever you have done and planned so far, that's great. Thanks for doing the work. But we want to come in, we want to talk to the leadership team, we want to talk to those that are in ministry team leaders, and figure out what their true gaps are, where they need things. Because, if somebody says, okay, we need 10 more classrooms for discipleship, Matthew's new, so he says he wants 10 new classrooms for discipleship. I'll pick on him because he's new. They'll be like, okay, that's great, but really you actually only need 2 because you can multi-use, you can flip them over, things like that. So again, they have the brain and they have the experience to point us in the right direction instead of us saying, well, we know we need this, we know we need that, and we start just to Frankenstein this thing together. So having wisdom from people that have been doing it and again, a couple of the firms have been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years, and with the help of CIF as well that helped build this building, we know that we're in over our heads, essentially. We're beyond what we have experience with, so we want to get that wisdom and guidance to take us to the next step.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with, you can get a lot of architects out there that are, design everything per se. We're kind of dwindling it down to the ones that really affect our business or our line of what we need. So that's why we are looking at, architects that are more or less aligned with our needs, so.
Yeah, they specialize in churches.
Yeah.
I will say we're missing 2 on the team, David Katz and Mark Cobb. For those that know them, thank them as well. So.
Anything you want to add, Melanie?
the only thing that I want to add to this, or this is kind of maybe over here, what we're doing now is for the benefit 25 years down the road. We're not building for ourselves. Like when we built this building, it was huge, absolutely huge. And it hasn't taken that long for us to overflow it. And so whatever we do, we cannot look here. We have to look out to the future. So, my 2 cents.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, we talk about moving forward and looking years ahead. We're not looking at building a building that's so big or add on so big that it's more than we need now. We'd like to phase that, or I shouldn't say phase that, but set it up so that when we do build, if we do build something, that we look to the future on things we can bring in, like additional electrical service and stuff that is can accommodate further things in the future. So we just want to have those conversations with that architect to understand as well. When we move forward and we want to expand, we want to be able to do that with ease instead of have to redo everything that's existing in the facility we've got.
So the architect firm that you're thinking of hiring, do they come with like a package deal, or this is what's going to cost us, and here's what you're going to get in return?
Yeah, so I've been reaching out to those in our pastor networks. I reached out to the district, North Central District. I reached out to CIF, and I said, hey, send all the contacts you have just so we can start the conversation. Just from our district, I think I got about half a dozen contacts. Reached out to all of them, only 2 responded. One was the same day, the second one was the next day. So those are the only 2 they're not even bids yet, but they're two conversations we've started. And both of them said that we want to do this in multiple steps. First step is talk to all leadership, figure out what your game plan is, help you design the game plan, and then let's look at what the actual building is gonna be. So they're real specific into it. Cost-wise, I mean, we'll just be upfront because that's what matters here. So one of them quoted, and again, this was after one conversation, so it's not full story. They haven't come and talked to us at all yet in person. But one was like $22,000 just for the design, vision, what do we really need? And then there's the actual building and that cost. So it's a big chunk, but again, if we're building for 25 to 30, 40, 50 years in the future, I don't think we should cut corners because that will cost us exponentially more in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, and one thing just to remember too, it's, you know, when you're looking at paying these, you know, in design and this, some of your best money you're gonna spend on is to get that design right to start with. So that's why it's pertinent to go with the person, architect that we feel comfortable with, so.
I was just gonna say, from my experience and background, nothing to do with building churches, $22K is cheap.
This day and age, it's not bad.
Just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, because I did come in a little late. You are talking a complete new facility then, correctly?
No, we're trying to, you know, we've identified, Greg, through our meetings that we've had, that we do need additional space. What we're at this point is what we're asking for is the okay to hire an architect to take it beyond where we have to really decide what we need and how can we best use what we currently have.
Okay, thank you.
So,
And that might be and/or new space. So they're gonna look at everything from just redesign everything here to adding on to, you know, whatever it could be. So, yeah. Yep. Good question.
yeah, just may want to clarify
Yep.
that.
So to clarify, there's two firms we want to hire at this point. One is CIF, so that's Christian Investment Financial, and they will help us with big picture, vision, fundraising, loans, all that stuff. They will handle the financial side, and then we also want to hire a firm, a building firm, that will go through what's spatial needs do we have, what's the future look like there, and help us get on the right path for actual building space. So it's one vote. There's a green and a white. I think this is the white one first. Yep, so white
Yes.
one first. So this is it's just the one line. Do you approve moving forward with the building project? Circle yes or no. And that includes the two hires within there. But like we've said, we don't have the plan yet. When we get to the plan, there will be another meeting that we will present to everybody of say, here's the plan that's been proposed through all these discussions, and then the congregation will vote on that as well.
I have a question. Just in building, we always ask, what's your budget? Is there a budget line we're looking at? I mean, it doesn't sound like we know what we're doing, so it's like you have to know what are we willing to spend and finance.
Right. Yeah, it's a
Before
great.
they can say, this is what we can do.
Yep. And it's a great question. And both CIF and the couple firms I've talked to are real honest, and they're like, what's your annual budget, like just normal annual budget, and what's your congregation size? And they've said, really, you can't afford more than a $2 to $3 million project, just with what we have. And it depends on how you look at it. It might be a small number, it might be a big number, but they give us those parameters. And CIF has said, we will not let you build more than that. And both of these firms have said, we will not let you build more than that, because they know and understand churches and how we work, and they're in ministry as well, so they're not gonna push us beyond our limits. They're gonna, if anything, rein us in, because we have big goals. There's a lot of people in this area. Can I get an amen?
It's generally a standard equation they use based off your current budget.
Having been through church building for 30 years, I've had several professional people put their 2 cents worth, if you will. And I think that this is a good process.
Thank you. Yep.
I've got a couple of questions on the property that we're going to be purchasing. Will
Could
that take?
Could we just hold those, sorry, until?
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
because what we want to do is cast the votes for the building project. Once there's no more questions on that, then I can talk about the property one while things are being tabulated. Because, yeah, there's a lot of open questions on that one still, too. So any other questions on building project? If not, circle yes or no. And don't hold it against me that I'm wearing an Iowa shirt.
So just to make sure everybody's clear, you're using the white ballot now, not the green ballot. We'll be doing the vote on the green ballot in a few minutes, but not right now. And there will be people coming around to collect that. And then while that's being tabulated, I would like to invite Chris back up to talk about the piece of property vote that we'd be looking at as well.
I got this one. All right, so piece of property, like we had talked about earlier, it came up in discussions of everything that we probably need more green space. So we've got big picture, 5.85 acres right here that this building is on. Faith House is like 1 acre. Then I want to say the Hope House is like 2.8 or something like that. So we talked about, do we close the road down, make this all one contiguous piece of land? What does that do for green space, parking lot size, area, all that fun stuff? Initial discussions on closing down the Overly Loop, so that way we can just have the whole thing, because the easy way is just to expand the parking lot way out there. Didn't go as smoothly as we would have hoped. So we are adapting, but part of that, and Don Nosbish works with MnDOT, and he just had the idea on the facilities team of, hey, why don't we just buy this chunk of land right here, because that adds more space. So I started that conversation in the spring, over the winter, something like that, and went through all the channels, and they all said, yeah, it's a pretty easy thing, because MnDOT would rather not have more land that they have to manage. So essentially what it equates to is it's 1.14 acres, and in the packet, there is even a picture of what it all looks like, and there's all the official paperwork of sizing and area, square footage, degrees, blibbity blah, all the technical mumbo jumbo. But long story short, 1.14 acres for $2,500. So again, Sarah, like you said, $22,000 isn't a huge price tag in the grand scheme of things, but $2,500 for another acre of green space, I think will go a long way. And, you know, the capabilities of what we do with it, again, we don't know. There's ideas of pushing a whole bunch of dirt out to level it off so have more space. Otherwise, just having that green space available is easily beneficial in my mind. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to be biased. But so that is the proposal. So this is separate from building. This isn't meaning that we are building on that 1.14 acres. This is just to acquire that 1.14 acres for $2,500. And I will open up for questions. Back to you, Tom.
to continue,
Yes. Sorry, thank you.
does the property take us down to the right-of-way for 371, or is there more property between what we're buying and 371?
There is still more property, and I want to say, so it would be the same property line that continues down this business corridor, 100 feet, I think, is from the center line, bottom of the ditch. Yeah, so that would essentially give us this whole hill and until the bottom of the hill.
And the bottom of the hill starts the right-of-way? Or there's not another piece of property down there we might end up buying at some point?
Correct. Yep. That is all right away.
The second thing, the 2,500 sounds great, but in the email, items 1 and 2 in their list kind of leave it open-ended that there could be lots of other expenses associated with the purchase. All current real estate taxes, seller makes no representation about the status of the title, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Those could be serious problems.
Right, and that's a great point. The benefit of us being a church is we are exempt from pretty much all taxes, but I can counter and ensure that they have
They would have to be
no
current.
other liens or assessments or anything like that
Yeah,
on the
They
property.
would have to be current on taxes before we could be exempt.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
State of Minnesota is exempt, MnDOT is exempt. So there's no taxes on the.
So what are those items about then? All current real estate taxes, existing or pending assessments, blah, blah, blah? And
So this is an assumption, but I would say it's all their legal fee or legal words that they have to go through to just to make sure we don't hold them accountable for anything. But like Sandy said, currently MnDOT owns that. So that's to cover their behind in case there's anything. But we can have a title assessment team review it if we deem necessary.
it just seems like that would be a good idea, just to make sure there are no liabilities or whatever.
Don, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you know of any, this might be way outside your realm. Is it way outside your realm?
Okay, so I don't want to speak for MnDOT, but I go through a lot of this at work. And this is a standard plate, so if the highway department, MnDOT buys a piece of property to expand a road, they use a portion of it, they sell the balance of it, and it's just what you said, it's there to cover themselves. This has been part of MnDOT right away. We did the kind of some background checking on it for a significant number of years. You can always do a title search and check it, but they won't. We clean up old sites to make sure they're in perfect condition before we get rid of them. So I would be very comfortable that there's no issues, but if it makes people feel better, I would say, a simple title search would probably relieve that.
Or title insurance? Yeah, because I would have, last I checked, title insurance was a few $100. I mean, you're in the banking industry, 600 from previous knowledge?
So that little triangle piece, 100 by 100 there, is that not part of the property?
Correct.
Do you know why that's not?
I'm assuming it's all right away. Back for Don.
So the triangle piece that gets left there, MnDOT would like to control those, I'd call them 45-degree angles for sight distances. And so when we're selling something, when MnDOT sells something, they won't sell that portion. Because if there's ever an expansion, I'm sure there wouldn't be in this area. But if there ever is, 50, 80 years from now, then they don't have to come back and buy that and redo that. So they tend to keep those back.
So the question is, why is green space important? For commercial property, you need to have a certain percentage of the whole property footprint as green space. And I know we looked at it, I don't remember what it was, 60%, 80% green space, something like that. No, it wasn't even that high. Go for Sandy.
Okay, Julie's next, I guess.
I just had a question.
What is for green space is to keep that footprint. Go ahead.
From the center line, of the highway, how far out, because we're having trouble with Turtle Lake Township, that's why I'm asking. Okay, how far out does the highway department own? And if that ever turns into 4-lane, because you're talking 30, 40 years down the lane, road, or they put in a turn lane, which is gonna eat up part of the surface, where do you sit with, do you have adequate land that they can still do that? Does that make sense?
Yes. I cannot answer for your own Turtle Lake Township. Yep, I want to say it's 100 to 150 feet off the center line. That's a guesstimate. And as far as adequate space, like Don said, they wouldn't sell it to us unless there was no plans in the future. And if there was plans, we are now in line with every other piece of property that goes along the corridor business property right now. So we would not be immune to it. We would be in the same boat as everybody else. And honestly, I've heard more about a bypass than I have an expansion of this highway. So I'm not worried about it. And again, for $2,500 right now to buy this to expand our space, yeah, it's cheap. It's cheap.
I'm going to go back to green space and why it's necessary. Because of impervious surface, which means hard surfaces when it rains and water runoff, we need X amount of green space, soft dirt, so to speak, for that water to run. And commercial, we can, because we would be doing it under the commercial, we don't need as much green space. But as we're building, we need a bigger roof, which is impervious surface, and a lot more parking lot, which is impervious surface. So the more we can get green space around us that we can't really use for anything but rain, water to run off. That's why we need green space.
Yep, thank you. That does help. Other questions?
I'm trying to figure this picture out. I can't imagine we'd get part of that road.
No.
So that's crossed out, that's not included, but why is it in the drawing here? The loop,
Yep.
you know?
So where it says remove orders,
Yeah,
that is to just confirm that we don't own that. We are not buying that. Am I reading that down correctly? Do you remember?
I mean, why would it even be in the picture if it couldn't be bought? I don't get it.
Because the angle, so as I'm talking through this, I'm remembering Oberly Loop and who owns that. Because right now, if we take off the green line, we would, they're clarifying that we are not buying part of that road. So it's saying that we are not collecting that because that is staying with the township that owns Oberly Loop. Does that help, Bonnie? Right, yeah, we own all the Faith House and Hope House land. This is to make you ask more questions, Bonnie.
How do you know that it's a hard no on ever closing Oberly Loop?
It's not a hard no. We don't know that. Yeah.
There was just chuckles like it was never going to happen.
Right. So I think we discussed at one of the last business meetings.
Our initial visit was not encouraging, but we do not have a hard no on ever. Correct.
And we wanted to be able to move forward with something instead of fighting through that for who knows how long.
Remember sometime in the past in discussion of properties, there was some res property adjacent to ours. Is that on the other side of Oberly Loop? And there's still that property there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the tribe owns about an acre and a half between our parcel with the Faith House and Highway 371.
Okay.
Good memory. Update on building project. We have 53 yeses and 0 nos. So that is approved and moving forward. Thank you, thank you.
So unanimous, which way?
It's unanimous, right, Matthew? Inside joke, sorry. Any other thoughts, questions?
Okay. So now if you guys, we're going to vote on buying this piece of property for the 2,500. If you could fill this out and pass it in, then we can have that counted up quickly and, yes.
You need to make an official motion and second on this because we're purchasing real estate.
So moved. Do I have by Sarah Robinson?
Sarah Robinson
Seconded by-
moves.
okay.
Cindy Larson seconds. Thank you, Cindy.
And then now your vote on that piece of paper is the vote for that motion. And I'll be right back. Sorry, I'm not going to sing, I'm not going to dance. No. My dad jokes have been outlawed by the entire family, so. Yes. Somewhere in front of you. Sorry, for those at home, the question was, can you give us the proper putting stance? While they're counting, I do want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you very much. It's been a gorgeous day, and I really do appreciate everybody taking the time to come out. Yeah. If you didn't hear that note, we had double our quorum tonight, so it was a good turnout. Thank you all. Yeah. The vote to approve the motion to purchase the piece of property, vote was 53 yes, 0 no's. So thank you all. That is the end of our scheduled business. Is there any new business? Having said that, before I close in prayer, would someone make a motion to adjourn? Moved. Any second? All those in favor say yay. Perfect. If we can bow our heads in prayer. Thank you, guys. Lord, thank you. Thank you for being with us. Stay with us. Stay with us through this whole process. Your love for us sustains us. Bless the work done tonight and bless the process to promote your love for us. We ask this in Jesus' name.